Welcome to the Ten Boom Institute's Q&A Tuesday. We have a fabulous question today coming in from Jeannie, and it has to do with writing while we're reading. She asks, "Hi, I watched a video of yours today and I heard you mention Commonplace books. Have you addressed this elsewhere? If not, do you have information you can share with me on how to make one? Thanks." Well, Jeannie, we're going to talk about Commonplace books today because they have everything to do with writing, and writing has everything to do with reading great books. It's something that most of us don't want to do, and we put it off and we don't care about it. But let me tell you something that John Adams told his son John Quincy. He said, "We think and improve our judgments by committing our thoughts to paper." The number one reason for having a Commonplace book is so that you can learn to think better. And it's something that's been done for ages and ages and ages. It's something that is still done in some liberal arts models. And it's an important part of the whole reading process. If you really want to read great stuff and have it change you, then writing is part of the process, because when you put things on paper, you have all those thoughts jumbling around in your brain, and you need to make sense of them. Writing them, committing them to paper, like John Adams says, means you have to put order to them and you have to make sense of them. And it actually so often helps you clarify what you are actually thinking, but it also makes you a better thinker. And when you're a better thinker, all kinds of opportunities open up to you. You're a better salesman, you're a better business owner, you're a better everything. You're a better parent, you're a better friend when you know how to think more clearly. That's one of the objectives that we have here. So let's talk for just a moment about what Commonplace books are, where they came from, and how to have one. A Commonplace book today, in today's world, would look something like our composition books. Just about. It can be a spiral notebook, it could be something you get pieces of paper together and you staple them together. It doesn't matter, as long as it's some kind of notebook with blank pages where you can write your thoughts. Now, there are lots of different tabs you can buy, and booklets with different categories in them. If you want to organize your thoughts that way, that's marvelous. I want to read what this is Sir Francis Bacon. This was in 1620. He wrote this about Commonplace books, and it says a lot about how important it is to write while we're reading and what we should write. He said, "The ancients followed the same course as ourselves. When commencing their meditations," that's the first place we want to stop. Really fascinating, commencing their meditations. They didn't read just to be entertained. They read to be better. They read to improve themselves. They read to find truth. And that's what we want to do here at the Ten Boom Institute. And so we're going to begin our meditations. When we open a really great book, it doesn't matter how long it takes us to get through it. It matters that the book gets through us. And in order to get the book through us, we need to meditate. We need to think about what it is that we're reading. So we're going to commence our meditations, laid up a great store of instances and particulars. So we have favorite quotes, we have thoughts and ideas that come to our minds, we have actual facts in history or scientific facts or things that we learned, and we need to store them somewhere. We need to remember them. Now, I'm a really big fan of marking your book well, so I think a lot of that information should be in your book. But when you're thinking and meditating and pondering, there's not room often for that kind of thinking in your book, so you got to have a Commonplace book. And digested them. He says they stored up, they were beginning to meditate, so they stored up their instances and particulars and digested them under topics and titles in their Commonplace books. You're digesting them, and when you digest something, it becomes part of you. It becomes part of who you are because you've meditated and you've written it down. I love that metaphor. So we want a Commonplace book where we can think and write down our thoughts and make sense of what's going on in our minds. And you can have topics and titles in your Commonplace book, and you can categorize it any way you want. But you ought to really look at the How to Mark a Book program video so that you can know how to mark your book properly, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a Commonplace book. Before we quit, let me give you a couple examples of some of my Commonplace books. I talked about this one in the Euclid post. in our Euclid course, it was mentored. It was a fabulous experience. Watch that post so you can know what I mean. This is a graphing notebook, and I was encouraged to write down all of Euclid's definitions and write my thoughts about them. And I go back and read these thoughts, and I still have insights about what math is and how numbers can be a pursuit of truth, and what things mean and what absolutes are. It's very, very valuable. Here's another one, Commonplace book I have, and these are all composition books, I usually use that. And this one is history. And so actually it has my thoughts and ideas, but again, remember when it had the particulars and the instances. I actually printed off maps, and these are several maps. I printed off several timelines, and then I went through these timelines. This is actually the Greek gods. This is a map of the Acropolis. And then I had this timeline that I printed off here and marked it all up like crazy so that I could remember. I referenced it often, and you can do it that way. You can just buy a Greek timeline. But again, it was history, and so if you've watched the How to Read History, then you know what I mean about using maps and timelines and all those resources, because it's so critical. And then I went in and I wrote down some definitions of different things and some information. I got into ancient Egypt, and I'm writing down my thoughts about history. Another one that I'll show you, this is literature and writing, and often people will use a Commonplace book the very most. For literature, I was going through and writing down some of my favorite quotes, and then I spent some time in Madame Bovary. This is a great idea. I wrote the date. I'm so grateful I wrote the date. I want to know how long ago I read that and what was going on in my life when I had these thoughts about Madame Bovary, and I wrote down who I felt like the different characters were like and who they were. Here's a bunch of questions and thoughts from The Wizard of Oz. And I would go back and sometimes highlight, sometimes put headings so I could find things. Bridge to Terabithia was another one I was reading after those. And then I would actually write down some of my very favorite quotes and go back and try to memorize them and digest that information and make it part of me by writing it down. So that's what a Commonplace book is. It's been used, like in this quote from Francis Bacon. He said the ancients used Commonplace books. It's a Western tradition tool to write things down in a Commonplace book as you read great stuff. He was doing it in the 1620s, and the founders were doing it in early America, and today we still want to do it because it's still a really important skill for getting the book through us and building character and becoming the people that we want to be as we read. So if this video was helpful, please share it with a friend. Like us if you like us. Watch everything, all the other posts that we have here, and comment and let us know. Have you used a Commonplace book? Was it helpful for you? Do you have suggestions for others that want to get started? And of course, send us your questions to Q&A Tuesday so we can answer them next time.